What type of rental property should you be buying? I'm going to show you everything you should consider, and then I'm going to give you my buy box. You could literally take my buy box, copy it, and make it your own. And I think those are the best types of single family properties you should be buying. So let's dive in. These, I think, are the best rental properties to buy. First of all, the first thing we need to do is you got to understand your buy box, right? So you should have this all written down. This way, when you go and get an investor-friendly agent, which we have plenty of those on staff here at Evernest, if you get yourself an investor-friendly agent, they need to know what you're looking for, because they can put in their criteria exactly what you have for your buy box, and then they sift through everything, and you'll be able to ignore all the things that don't matter to you and only focus in on the few that do, so that you can make offers, be efficient with your time, with your energy. So set your criteria, buy box. So if you were looking at a duplex, right? Maybe you want it built after 1980. Maybe you want 2 bedrooms in each side of the duplex, separate utilities you don't want to pay, and anything, $400,000 to $500,000 and below. I think that's probably a pretty doable buy box. If you're looking at single family, maybe it's built after the 1950s. Maybe you want it to be a long-term rental. Maybe you're thinking no HOAs. So if you're looking in Class C areas, which is middle of the road working class, probably not a lot of HOAs that have tight restrictions. Usually those are going to be Class B, Class A type areas. And then maybe you're saying under 200,000. This is where you want to be. These are examples of buy box. And again, a little bit, I'm going to give you my buy box so you can just take it and copy what I use. All right, location criteria. Obviously, you should know where you're buying. And it's really interesting because I was reading some research and talking about the natural disasters they've had in Florida most recently, insurance, things that insurance companies are doing in certain areas of the country. Like, all of these things matter, right? If you're looking at an area, don't just pay attention to rental demand. Don't just pay attention to employment. You got to know the things that are happening in the local economy, things with insurance, things with taxes, things with regulations. You should be understanding all of these things when you're looking at market. So in order to do that, you probably need to talk to experts on the ground. If you're an out-of-state investor, you need to be talking with people who understand this. A lot of property managers, local property managers like ourselves, know these areas very, very well and can give you some insight as to things you should consider. But you want to look at vacancy rate, average rents, school systems, I think is really important. There's several websites out there that give you good information. They'll grade school systems A through F, and then growth projections for that area. And remember, these things go in cycles. So right now I just have been reading about Austin has cooled off considerably. Well, Austin 3 or 4 or 5 years ago was the hottest place out there for rental demand, but they've built a lot of multifamily recently, and so that supply's cooled off demand. It's been able to meet the demand. Therefore, some of the pricing is stabilizing and even dropping a little bit back from 2021 and 2022 levels. All right. Property type, right? So what you want to avoid you want to really avoid homes with pools. We do get this question a good bit. We'll say, hey, is it okay if I rent my house with a pool? Yes, it's fine if it's your personal residence. But if you're out buying rental property, I would avoid pools unless you just want it to be, unless you're thinking short-term rental, and that's a whole different ballgame. But townhomes, I'd probably avoid townhomes. Manufactured homes, unless you know what you're doing, I think I would avoid those. Age of properties, listen, there's plenty of houses out there. You do not need to buy things that were built in 1910 and 1920 and 1930. 1950 or newer is probably a good place to start. And then size of property, 3 bedrooms, 900 square feet. I would avoid probably 2 beds, 1 bed, unless you're looking at multifamily. If you're looking at multifamily, then I would still stick with 2 bedrooms. 1 bed I'd probably avoid. But if you're looking at single family, then I prefer 3 bedrooms. I've owned 2 bedrooms before, and they were okay, weren't great. They didn't keep residents in there long term. If there was a family and they outgrew it, they moved out. All right, next, financial criteria. Obviously, you've got to determine, does this thing make sense? I would be looking, this is just me, this is kind of a no-brainer, but what it does is what you're going to do with your agent, your investor-friendly agent, is they're not only going to be looking for things that meet your buy box, but properties that they believe are undervalued, or maybe they have some repairs. So you want to find something undervalued that you can value add to like increase the equity in that property, because you're going to increase the value, the appraised value of that house or multifamily. Obviously, 200. We say anywhere from 200 to 300 is adequate cash flow, as long as you've taken into an account all of the expenses. Don't shortcut yourself. Don't think that you're going to get away with cutting out certain things in your operating expenses. Just not going to happen. It's not just debt and taxes and insurance. There's repairs and maintenance that you can't skimp on. There's vacancy that you need to include. There's CapEx expenditures. You've got to look long-term and think, well, what about roofs and air conditioners and hot water heaters? What about the big ticket items? Think about these things. And then obviously you just want to look for a good return. You just want to make sure that it's adequate for you. And there's a number of ways that you can look at this. I recorded a video maybe a year ago that was just all about like how to analyze a property. I just did it with a pen and paper, so you can look that up. So then you want to think about the condition of the property. If you are relatively new, you just want to go in and fix up some pretty cosmetic things. If you're more experienced, the more experienced people who have contacts, maybe they're working with a company like ours that does extensive renovations, then you may be more comfortable with foundation issues. And I know in some parts of the country, foundation issues are more common than in others, but if you're more experienced, then you're probably going to be okay with major repairs. New roofs, like what if the decking needs to be replaced? Like these are the things that you should be considering, because fewer people will be willing to take them on. But if you're newer to investing, then stick with things that are cosmetic, paint, flooring, those types of things. Everything else, I would avoid it if I were you. Then you got to know your target resident, right? So target working professionals. If I'm buying in a C-class area, which is a working class area, then I want to target people who have steady jobs. Maybe they've been there for a while. They can afford it. They have their credit's pretty decent. They've got a good rental history. They don't have any violent misdemeanors, no felonies. They have good previous landlord referrals. There's all kind of things that you want to look for in a resident. And I just think, unless you're looking for Section 8, which I just recorded a video on Section 8, I would check that out. But unless you're looking for Section 8, which it doesn't matter what their income is, because the government's going to pay a majority probably of that rent, you want to find somebody that is just a working class professional. Now, note here, I put here, match the property features to the residents. If you wanted to attract families, then 3-bedroom, 900 plus square feet. However, you can't discriminate based on familial status. So you can't just say, I'm only renting to families. Okay. So just know that if you're doing this yourself, you have to abide by fair housing, and it has to be open to everybody. So if somebody single wants to rent it, absolutely. Put them through the same screening criteria you would anybody else. Also, think about, you probably, if you wanted to own rentals in, let's say, Columbus, Ohio, there's a big difference between student housing and long-term housing that you want to go after. So unless you're experienced with student housing, I would steer clear of student housing and focus on long-term residents. Student housing has a lot of turnover. There's special considerations, the seasonality of it all, the propensity to be rougher on properties for college folks. So I tend to steer more towards long-term stability. I'm thankful for student housing. I have a son who just finished at Auburn, and I have a daughter who's down there right now. So I'm thankful for it. It's just I don't want to own student housing. Most of the student housing that I know are owned by parents of kids who live down there. All right. Also think about exit strategy. If you're thinking about the property, think about different exit strategies. If I bought it, could I sell it on the retail market? If I bought this property, could I wholesale it out? Is there enough in there that I could wholesale it out? If you're buying it and you're just barely squeezing by, the margins are barely there, then you may want to think about it. But could you owner finance it out? I was just out of my office just 10 minutes ago talking to an investor who sells properties. He finances, owner finance properties to other investors. So he buys them and then sells them on a note to other investors who fix them up and rent them out. There's all kind of ways to sell properties or to exit properties. What about selling it on the retail market, short-term rental, long-term rental? There's all kind of ways, but you should be considering all these things. All right. Now, this is my buy box. This is one that you can, and I've kind of mentioned some of these. I only am interested in houses 1950 or newer, preferably newer. I'm okay though with a house built in 1960, a house built in 1965. I'm okay with that. Most of them came with central heat and air, so there's not a lot I need to do with them. If you're buying a house in 1920, it didn't, and so those are things you're going to need to consider. There's just more repairs with the older houses. They look beautiful. They're well built, but the high ceilings, the older electrical, older plumbing all adds up to more repairs. So 1950, I'm always looking at 3 bedrooms. I've mentioned that. I've owned some 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms rented longer. 900 square feet would be the minimum. As a matter of fact, I probably might bump this up to 1,000. I think a 3-bedroom, 1,000 square foot is probably the minimum. That means there's going to be a den, a kitchen, and 3 bedrooms. That's about it. But if you have a den and a family room or a dining room, and you have like a formal living room, whatever, that's probably you're looking at 1,500 square feet. I think that's a great size. I love 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot. If I could choose them all, if that could be super exact, that would be at 3, 2, 1,500. However, some of the older house stock, like the 1950s, maybe 1960s, were 3, 1.5, or 3, 1. So just have to think about that. But the main requirement is the 3-bedroom. Less than 1.5 acres, I really don't want a big lot. I don't want a big lot. It's a pain in the neck. Residents do not want to cut grass on a massive lot. And when it's vacant, I don't want to have to pay to cut a massive lot. So make sure your lot, half an acre, be beautiful. Like that, smaller the better. The smaller the better. Less than, do not buy something really big. Absolutely no pools, no townhomes, no manufactured homes. That's my buy box. Like if I were to go next door to Clay, who's our local investor-friendly agent here, and I said, Clay, this is exactly what I'm looking for, man. He could put that in and he could start looking and find me the houses that I need. So that's it. That's what I have. There's my buy box. I hope this helps kind of frame some things for you, how you should be thinking about this. And listen, this is all about long-term. This is long-term. We're not thinking, how can I get rich quick? This is, how can I build wealth over time? How can I build a portfolio over time? And you can do it. It starts with just one property at a time. And if you have a 10 to 20 year outlook, you'll be amazed. I think Stephen Covey says in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, people overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they can do in 10. So I hope that helps. And go ahead and subscribe to this channel. We'll be back with more investor-friendly content just like this.